Chris here, back with a full review of Xiaomi's Mi 8 SE. So this is the smaller model of the Mi 8. It has a 5.88-inch screen. It's powered by the Snapdragon 710, 4 to 6 gigabytes of RAM, and 64 gigabytes of internal storage. It is eMMC 5.1 spec, and that is all we get. We don't have 128 or 256 gigabyte storage option, which I feel is an error considering that this phone, you cannot expand upon that storage. There is no micro SD card support. But the build quality of this phone is very good. It has a full metal frame all around the outside, and we've got glass on the rear. So it's got a bit of a Sony Xperia meets iPhone 10 kind of look to it. The quality of it is good. We've got metal buttons on the right hand side. One of them's textured, the power button, so you can distinguish the difference between the volume rocker and that button there. The glass on the rear is 2.5D, and it's quite easy to scratch, I have noticed. I've already got quite a few scratches. I don't even know how this has happened because I have been using a case. Now the camera module, you can see we've got obviously two cameras there, dual tone LED flash. The main sensor is 12 megapixels. It has an f1.9 aperture. It is a Sony IMX363 sensor, which is a decent sensor and used in a lot of flagships. It's the same sensor used in the Mi 8, but here it is lacking optical image stabilization. We only have electronic, up to, at the time of this review, only 1080p. 4K currently does not work, so that footage is shaky. It does take a really good photo, but I'll get onto that later on in this review. The other camera below that is 5 megapixels. That's just used for your portrait mode or your depth effect blurred backgrounds. Up the top, we have an IR transmitter secondary mic for voice calls, a couple of antenna lines there. Down the bottom, Type-C port, microphone, loudspeaker. Now, the Type-C port obviously outputs audio. You have to use the adapter. Now, when you use the adapter, audio quality is good. It's very clear. There's no hiss, there's no static. Now, I'll give you a sample of that loudspeaker just to mention that the loudness is good. The quality isn't super high. It can distort a little bit at 100% volume, but overall, not a bad loudspeaker. But here's that sample. And then on the left-hand side of the device, there is a SIM tray. Yes, it has a notch. So it's wider, this notch, than most other phones with notches. It's a lot wider than the OnePlus 6. It has a little smaller earpiece in here. Now, call quality and voice calls, when you listen to them through this earpiece, of course, sound okay, but not the best. I believe it's probably because of the size of the earpiece. Being smaller, it just sounds a little flatter, but the volume is all right that comes out of it. Now we've got a front-facing LED flash for selfies, and the camera on the front here is 20 megapixels with an f2.0 aperture. It tends to overexpose. Now this is a common thing that's been happening with Xiaomi phones onto the display. So it's a Samsung AMOLED panel, and it's got a really good brightness. This is 790 lux maximum output. Really bright, super bright. It's got good color reproduction. The whites look good. And you can, of course, tweak that to your own personal preference through the settings. Now, it also supports HDR. I only have one minor complaint with this otherwise really great screen, is that the blacks at certain angles don't look as deep as they should. Now, it's down to either two things I have worked out. It's either the glass they have used covering the AMOLED panel, or it's not optically bonded. There may be a small gap between the AMOLED panel and then the glass, or even maybe perhaps a layer on top of the AMOLED panel. That's the only thing, but it is just a very minor complaint. This display is so much better than the likes of the Mi 6X's display or the Redmi Note 5's display. They use IPS panels, the 18:9 aspect ratio, but this display here to me is just a lot better. Now the UI it runs is MIUI 9.5. That's Xiaomi's own, and I won't go into a lot of detail with it. That it's got a lot of features on there. We've got things like double tap to wake. We do have also an always on display. So that's something that's come through, of course, with the AMOLED panel. They can use that. Now, at the moment, in time of this review, all it can display is just your messages and the date and the time. That's it. I really wish it would display other notifications. If they could allow us to customize that, it would be great. But it's really good having this feature there. Of course, it will slightly drain the battery. Now the thing with the UI and the notch too is that when you want to see the notifications, they're not actually there. You have to swipe down. The same goes for the battery percent, so that will not be displayed in the current setup and the icon. So Xiaomi's got a few patches to come through for this one clearly, because I've also seen some stutters with notifications. Swiping down has sometimes been very laggy, especially when you just turn on data or wireless and you start getting all those WhatsApp notifications coming through. There's a lot of lag at times, and the chipset is quite powerful, and it's not a fault of that. The other thing too, I've noticed just a couple of minor little bugs with the UI that I've had icons on top of other ones, so the text doubling up, very minor, and also sometimes some lag when using full gesture mode, just going through recent apps. So that's just a minor thing there. So there's a few little bugs that they have to iron out. Now, performance of the phone in general is very good though when you don't see any of that lag. You've got an Antutu score of almost 170,000, so that puts it above the Snapdragon 660 and the 636, which is about 130,000. So the performance is good. Now the wireless, I have a minor complaint here with the wireless. It doesn't seem to be as fast as other phones for some reason, and I cannot figure out why this is. I've done a lot of speed tests. I've also used apps like Wi-Fi Sweet Spot just to see the maximum throughput there, and it's falling below other phones. I just believe a patch is probably needed. Again, software here isn't quite there at the moment with this. GPS signal is good, it gets a fast lock. Also, the internal storage is fast for the specs. Now, when having a look at battery life, the battery capacity is 3,120 mAh, so it's not the largest because it is a smaller phone. Obviously, they had to cut down over, for example, the 3,400 we see in the Mi 8. But it did surprise with good battery life here. So with my own battery life tests that I do continual use. I use the phone quite demanding. You can call it moderate to heavy use, a lot of gaming, and it managed to get close to 8 hours of on-screen time. So you're going to get about 7 to 8 hours out of this phone. So it is definitely a 2-day mobile phone, of course, depending on your use. Just take this as a guide only. Charge time's also very quick, so it does support Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3, and in 30 minutes of charging, you can get around about 50% battery life, which is great, and to fully charge takes just over 1 hour and 20 minutes, so all good there. So onto the main camera here. It can take a really nice photo, a little bit oversaturated at times, but I know that most people will probably prefer these photos because the colors do look great, very nice, and when you're viewing them on the AMOLED panel, do they look even oversaturated more? Perhaps. It all depends on how you have the screen calibrated. But even getting these on my PC, looking at them, I did a comparison against the Redmi Note 5, and they tended to be a little bit more saturated, definitely, than the Redmi Note 5. But it did lose out there with low light performance against that phone. So make sure you do check out that review, that camera comparison. Gaming performance. So a lot of games, newer titles like PUBG, didn't actually auto-detect the Snapdragon 710 very well. Put it on the lowest settings, but if you use applications like GFX Tool, force it onto the high settings, the game is still very playable and it looks great. So the performance here of the Snapdragon 710 is great, and even having a look at Lineage 2 Revolution, that even on the highest settings, very playable, it's smooth. So good gaming performance. I think that with the, well, 1080p resolution, which is this basically is pushing, it has no issues with all the demanding titles. So this is now shooting in 4K, and you can see, of course, we get a lot more detail. The resolution is good. Now we do have that image stabilization enabled in settings, but you can see that clearly it is not working because the footage is a little bit shaky, and I don't have the steadiest of hands. It's definitely noticeable when you start to walk and move around. The audio quality is average. Xiaomi have to improve their audio quality. It's been a problem that we've had with their mobiles as of recent, and affecting mostly the flagships. So hopefully with MIUI 10, when that comes out, it will improve the quality of the audio and give us electronic image stabilization. Face unlocking is also very quick, it's fast, and it's also very insecure. There's a couple of videos that have been released, one from China especially, that they managed to fool the camera with a simple A4 printout in black and white of someone's face. If I've got time, I may do a video testing that one out. Now to quickly recap here, so we've got a fantastic AMOLED panel from Samsung, 5.88 inches. I really do like the size, the build of this. The screen, okay, it does have the notch, but what you're gaining is really good brightness, good color reproduction. Blacks, okay, at certain angles, they don't look as dark and deep as they should be for an AMOLED panel, but I think it's the glass. But really, The glass on the back as well, scratched. And I don't even know how I did it. Been using a case and it's got a couple of scratches on it already. So it's a little bit more fragile definitely than other phones because of the glass back on it. And yes, it has a bit of a copycat design look compared to say the Xperia, the iPhone 10. We know that's what Xiaomi has been doing recently with their designs. So the bezels on the side a little bit thicker than the press images, so be prepared for a little bit of a surprise when you get your hands on this if you happen to buy one. It just won't be exactly as you thought. I noticed that when I first unboxed this and thought, ooh, side bezels, but it is good. You're gaining a really, really good screen here. So battery life also excellent, call quality is good. Wireless speed's not as fast as I expected, but I believe it's down to software. GPS is working well. The audio quality from the 3.5 out using the adapter, of course, you have to plug the adapter in. That sounds good. It's clear, it's crystal clear. There's no static, there's no interference there. The loudness is good. But really it comes down to software with this phone here, that Xiaomi's got a lot of optimization to do with the camera. So fix the 4K electronic image stabilization or enable it or let third-party applications use it at least. They also need to optimize a little bit the camera in low light. Front-facing camera overexposes, they need to fix that, and the audio. There are bugs with the UI, so very minor bugs though, not the whole phone crashing, but I just noticed that icons doubling up now and then. I noticed some stutter, some lag that should not be happening with the Snapdragon 710. The 710 looks like an efficient chipset with a good combination of features, efficiency and power. It can play all the latest games on the high settings with good frame rates there. So overall, once Xiaomi fix the software, you've got yourself a very decent phone, priced similarly to the Mi 6X. And I think a lot of people have been asking me which one's the best. Obviously, this is faster, has the better display. I think the better cameras are on the 6X though, so that one might have a slight edge. I have a camera comparison of that one coming up. I'm currently working on it. And I do hope to catch you back in the channel soon with my upcoming reviews. If you haven't checked out my review of the Redmi Note 5, that's right up here, and also the camera comparison between the Redmi Note 5 and this Mi 8 SE. Thank you so much for watching.